That's cool, that's cool. So, at Wilson, right?
Yep.
You were probably with, Bob Mandrella?
Yes,
That
sir.
your
That was my
that's your
boss.
that's your mentor,
That was my
right?
mentor. Yep.
Now, going back, I was in the golf industry also on the
Right.
retail end. Uh, so if I remember correctly, back in the '90s or so, there was a listing of the 3 best-selling irons of all time,
Right.
and, I think it was the 845, the I-2, and the Hogan Edge, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken, and,
Correct.
now Wilson was still kinda like that old Wilson company, and
Yep.
all of a sudden, we get this Ultra 45 with a fire engine red shaft
Yep.
and the Orsinis Orca, John Daly. Now Wilson's a player. I mean, you
Right.
you had some
Well,
pretty good staff players and got
you kind of have to go back a little bit. You have to go back to the late 80s. So
Mhm.
somewhere around, you know, woodwoods were starting to die out. And I have to tell you a really quick story about doing persimmon wood. So I designed the last set of Wilson staff woods that Wilson ever produced. And Joe Phillips, who was the legendary tour rep for Wilson, goes, "Hey, we these need to be the best. These need to be great, and I'm gonna bring in some help." And I was like 26 at the time, and I'm like, "Help? I don't need help. I know everything," because everybody who's 26 thinks they
right.
know everything.
Sure.
So I'm working. I'm starting to work on the models, and all of a sudden he walks in with this short Italian guy, and he's like, "Larry, this is Tony Penna." I'm like, Tony Penna, holy, the guy that's designed all the great McGregor stuff, designed everything. And so I spent a week with Mr. Penna, and he by the time we got to the end and got these clubs down, shaped them, milled them out, they're ready, finish them off, and he put them down, and he goes, if you keep listening to people, he goes, you might have a career in this. And he goes, because you're pretty good at this. And I go, Mr. Penna, you've told me for the last 7 days that I was the worst club maker on the planet, that I didn't know how to do anything. And he looks at me and he goes, if I told you you were good on the first day, would you have paid attention as much? And I'm like, yep, you're got you there. You are
Right.
correct.
Wow.
So yeah. So now after those persimmon woods, they wanted to do a line of metal woods. So I did the design for the Ultra Tour metal woods that Wilson brought out in the late 80s, and worked with Aldo on the Fire Stick shaft, creating a system of, basically we did it by torque. We went from 4035
Too late.
28 and down to 18. So, it was a shaft system. At the time, if you remember, TaylorMade had the Flex Twist out then, which was a silver and black shaft
Yes.
that they put in there. So we did that. And then probably 80, yeah, 88, early 88, Joe Phillips came again. He goes, I still think Woodwoods can make it. And I said, sure. So he and Bob Mandrell and I were in this bar called the Thirsty Whale, having a few cocktails, mapping this out over a cocktail napkin, which I wish the heck somebody would have saved that cocktail napkin. So now he's like, hey, let's do an oversized Woodwood. And I said, he goes, how big can you make it? I'm like, I don't know how big I can make it. I've never tried to make one bigger than a standard size. And he goes, well, why don't you try to make a bigger one? So I called the guys from Birchwood in Wisconsin, and said, hey, how big can you turn one? He goes, we can turn one as big as you want. So I flew up there from Chicago, and we did these turnings, and I had these 6 turnings, and they got massive necks on them. So somehow managed to get by the third one down to a golf club that looked pretty good. Had to put a hole in the bottom, whatever. So now it's the whale. It's the wood whale. So now we're trying to show it to some tour players, and we had just signed Payne Stewart, and Payne's like, I showed it to Payne, and he's like, "Oh man," he goes, "that thing's big." Back then it was big. He's like, "Not anymore, it's not," but he's like, "That's big." He goes, "I don't know about that." I go, "Payne, just do me a favor. I just had my second kid. I'm just trying to do my job. Let me shaft a few up, and why don't you take them and see how they work?" Well, later that year, the PGA was at Kemper Lakes in '89 in Chicago, and he had been working. We had tried some different inserts and different things, and hadn't seen him for about a month. And all of a sudden, they show up at the tournament on the practice round, and we had a whale. We had one of those like fake furry animal head covers that was a whale, and all they do is see the whale. Went up to his caddy, Mike Hicks, and I'm like, "Where's the Cleveland driver?" He goes, "Well, he left the Cleveland driver at home. He really likes this whale." I'm like, "Holy cow. All right, let's see how this goes." Well, plays good the first couple rounds, and I kind of had this feeling, and I'm like, so I called the guys up at Birchwood, and I said, "Hey, if Payne Stewart wins, how many of these can you turn a week?" And they gave me a number, and all of a sudden he wins the tournament. Mike Reed kind of falls apart on Sunday. Payne Stewart wins the PGA with the Wilson Whale. Well, Monday, all the marketing guys that thought Wood was dead are all of a sudden like, "How many of these can you make? Because we need to make a lot of these." So that had the Fire Stick shaft in it. So that's kind of where the Fire
Wow.
Stick kind of started exploding, was off the Whale. So he won the '89 PGA and the '91 US Open here at Hazeltine with that wood driver
With a fire stick shaft.
with a Fire Stick shaft in it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I didn't notice that.
that kind of
Yeah.
started then all of a sudden everything started to get a little hot. And then that was right at the time where, I kind of got an offer I couldn't refuse. And it's like, "Sorry guys, I'd love to stay, but they want to pay me a lot." And I got young kids, and we were off to Dallas. So,
So,
but then, yeah. And at that time, the irons, I had done the ultra irons. Uh, Daly played the ultra staff irons, which, that was a big thing, putting the staff on a cast golf club. I know that was
okay.
a major thing. Yeah. Right before I left, um, there's staff on a cast golf club, and then they signed Daly, and Daly starts playing great golf with it. And the great part was I was at UST, so we signed Daly to a deal, so he was playing UST painted Fire Stick shafts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that killer whale is an iteration of your wooden whale.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I thought, yeah, because I that year, when they had the staff Ultra 45s, they also had a semi cavity, and then they had the FG 51s,
Right.
and
Right.
they had a really tight lineup.
Yeah, they had the FG51s. They had the progressive set,
That's
which
the one I'm
was,
talking about.
yeah, which was a great set. And it's kind of funny. You kind of look at modern club design in modern companies. You know, when I was a Titleist and Phil Mickelson came along, we did the 731s, which was a progressive set that we did in left hand only. Uh,
I remember that. Yeah.
I don't understand why a major manufacturer doesn't have a progressive set. I mean, they do, you have to, when you're fitting, it's like, well, I feel comfortable up to the 6 iron. Can we do the 4 and the 5 iron? Like in ZX, tricks on ZX7s to ZX5s and all. But I would have just a progressive set all the way through and just go, you know what? Here's what here's what the best players in the world are doing now, because the problem is the golf ball, because when the golf ball came out in 2000, okay, we took a lot of spin away. So now all of a sudden, these guys that used to spin their 3-iron at 4,400 now can barely spin their 3-iron 3,000. So, we kind of created, because of the golf ball, because of the change in the golf ball for distance. Now I need a set of clubs where the ball can go in the air. But, you got to remember, progressive sets were around, in sets like that were around for a long time. I mean, you used to have guys play Wilson staff blades and they'd have a 2 and 3 ping I2 as their long irons. I mean,
Right.
that's been around for a long time. I mean, I can't tell you the guys that used to take, and we used to build sets for, and they would still have blades, but they'd have dynalites in their long irons and dynamic gold in their mid and short irons because they wanted more height out of their long irons. So,
Long irons.
the search for better long iron play has been, it's probably been going on before either of us were born.
Right. I think the solution was a hybrid,
Yes,
and I never loo took me about 5 years to figure out how to hit a hybrid.
right.
I didn't know what to do with it. I used to carry a Callaway 2-iron, Big Bertha 2-iron in a driver, and the 2-iron was,